Violence, death, murder, war. These are all words that a family-friendly toy company like LEGO does not want to be associated with. And yet, many of its most popular themes are driven by violence. Some go so far as to include war in their names. This is a far cry from the supposed pacifism of its early years. As it turns out, conviction is a rather plastic thing when money is involved. So, what happened? I am Professor Goat, and welcome back to Keyed Labs. Today we will be taking a look at the evolution of violence in LEGO. I just want to say from the start that I am not upset with LEGO becoming more violent and mature over the years. If anything, I'm pro-LEGO violence. This is a purely academic review of how things have changed over the years. Before LEGO as we know it was formed, the Kurt Christensen family produced many different toys, both wooden and plastic. The most iconic of these is the wooden duck, which has appeared in brick-built form in recent years. However, less well known are the semi-automatic plastic guns they produced in the late 40s. Despite the popularity, LEGO began to move away from these weapons in favor of other plastic products, namely their new automatic binding bricks. Having witnessed the horrors of the Second World War, Ole Kurt Christensen held strong pacifist beliefs, and was reluctant to include violent themes in their increasingly popular LEGO bricks. This is one of the reasons the classic era of LEGO had such a limited color palette, omitting common colors such as green, brown, and tan to discourage the building of military vehicles and bases. However, as the system evolved into the Legoland line, with castle and space fantasy themes in addition to the idyllic town setting, this pacifist philosophy proved difficult to maintain. A story with knights and castles couldn't be told without swords, axes, and bows. Neither could a trek of adventurous spacemen be told without phasers or disruptors. The designers eventually found a workaround for the overbearing restrictions. These minifigure accessories were not weapons. They were tools. A sword or axe could be used for cutting through foliage or chopping down trees, and these dishes and hand tools could just as easily be scanning equipment as implements of war. However, a hard limit was set at realistic weapons and modern tools of warfare. This meant no guns, ever. Until they changed their minds. It's worth pointing out that these flintlocks and revolvers are not quite modern, so technically they aren't military themed. Though these family-friendly weapons quickly became a staple of LEGO themes, the marketing often downplayed their violent attributes. Minifigures never directly attacked one another. Instead, they used their weapons on the environment in order to defeat enemies, capture a castle, or steal some treasure. While this is less true today, direct exchanges of blows are still somewhat frowned upon. This taboo continued into the 90s, until one partnership changed everything. With the release of Star Wars Episode 1 in 1999, LEGO began producing sets in a galaxy far, far away. As a space fantasy, Star Wars avoided LEGO's policy against modern warfare, but this line was quickly becoming blurred. The blasters and lightsabers were stylized in a way that didn't look like modern weapons, or even their film counterparts. One of the most revealing details of how taboo affected storytelling was with Bionicle. The narrative team was tasked with telling a violent story without actually showing any violence. Through tricks of lighting, camera angles, and implied blows, they could mask violence while still showing plenty of action. In the following years, we began to see death portrayed in LEGO media. In Bionicle, the Mask of Light, the Matoran Jawler was killed by absorbing an energy blast, and Takeda Nuva was crushed to death. These characters were, of course, quickly revived, because no one's ever really gone. But in its prequel, Legends of Metru Nui, we see the Turaga Lincoln die a slow and painful death after being struck by the Makuta. No resurrection, no cheating fate. This death was permanent. I can't stress enough just how game-changing this was. In LEGO Star Wars, the video game, you could smash apart enemies and allies using swords, blasters, or even fists. These violent depictions are more cute than graphic. These characters aren't even necessarily dead, they're just smashed. Disassembled so they can be put back together. Mostly. In Ninjago, Day of the Departed, we see characters wrestle with mortality and the fear of being forgotten in death. Sure, they were ghosts, but their time in the world was over. While this itself isn't violent, it suggests an existential crisis that would have been unquestionable in the 90s. At this point, LEGO had evolved from a belief in absolute pacifism to family-friendly violence and death, so long as it wasn't too graphic. It was no longer a question of whether violence or death was present, but how it was presented. Certain things were still out of the question. For example, LEGO would never make a first-person shooter. Until they did. They would never make a licensing deal with a first-person shooter. Until they did. The line has continued to blur with more authentic and detailed fantasy weapons. A SWAT minifigure, tanks, a faction from a certain world war, soldiers, fictional armies, and this thing. Yes, this is clearly where the line has to be drawn. For the most part, LEGO's found a comfortable balance between family friendliness and conflict. And while many LEGO fans may still crave more military-themed products, there are plenty of third-party producers, fan projects, and machas out there to fill the void. It's not all violence and war. Many themes such as LEGO City, Friends, Creator, and Technic continue to offer less action-oriented play experiences. It offers the consumer choice, so the parents and the child can decide what's right for them. Certain studies have been done on the evolution of violence in LEGO playsets and marketing, which the media have twisted to portray LEGO as a bloodthirsty company with exciting headlines such as, get this, LEGO has become exponentially more violent. Or this one, how LEGO. Oh, you get it. How about this one? LEGO's history of violence. Oh. Most of these are clearly just clickbait, just like those junk articles about how video games and movies cause violence. It's ridiculous. The only reason LEGO can be claimed to have an exponential increase in violence is because LEGO was so squeamish about violence in the first place. Do you think kids from the 80s, with only a handful of space sets and not a weapon in sight, didn't pit the Blacktron against the Futuron? Or the Black Knights against the Royal Knights? Denying conflict is to deny a fundamental part of ourselves. LEGO's finally realized this with their conflict in a box philosophy, where each action-oriented set has all the tools you need for a fight, whether it's clones and droids, Toa and Rahi, Ninja and Serpentine, or cops and robbers. While it's possible to have conflict without violence, it can be very difficult. LEGO's test groups proved that children wanted a heroic narrative, with good guys fighting the bad guys to save the world. It's why licensed themes such as Star Wars and superheroes, and original properties like Bionicle and Ninjago have such staying power with us. LEGO's eventual acceptance of violence was simply acknowledging this reality. Thank you for watching. We have more LEGO Evolution videos planned, so please consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. If not, just leave a like. It really helps us out here at Club Rick. If there is a topic you want me to cover, please let me know in the comments. Once again, thank you for watching. I am Professor Goat, and until next time, play well.